The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. This is part 2 of our look at the Survivor cards in the box. In this episode, we are going to discuss Making Preparations, Predator or Prey, Shed a Light, and At a Crossroads. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. You all rock! If you'd like to be amazing like these people and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty, Nicole Fiscus, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for their contributions to the channel. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. This is part 2 of our look at the Survivor cards in the box. The first card up is our first dilemma. There's a whole bunch of Survivor dilemmas in this box, and this is Making Preparations. It's an event that doesn't cost anything. We'll get into that in a second. It has the Dilemma and Tactic trait, max 2 dilemma per round. Revelation, choose 2 skills. Until the end of the investigation phase, each investigator gets +1 to each of the chosen skills and -1 to each other skill. So the dilemmas were introduced in this box. They don't cost anything because they have the revelation effect. So as soon as you draw this thing, it fires off, which can make the timing a little bit fickle. If you draw it during your turn, depending whether you're playing solo or multiplayer, your choices may change. If you draw it during upkeep, you have a mythos phase to weather before you get the skill bonuses, or you could always choose willpower and hope you draw rotting remains. I guess that's another option.
Yep.
These dilemmas tend to synergize with Katya Eastbank, the survivor ally in the box who costs 2 XP, because she can draw these and not trigger them and then tuck them under her, and then you draw them when you want them. So she can get around the timing issues. What do you think about Making Preparations?
Okay. So one thing to note about, I'll start off with the dilemmas in of themselves, is that, okay, if you're relying on upkeep to draw these things randomly, you're going to have a hard time. Because, okay, so let's say this is your one draw a turn, and let's say it just misfires because you don't end up guessing the correct stats that you're going to need, or you end up guessing that you're going to need willpower for the mythos phase, but then nobody draws any willpower treacheries. This could misfire, and then you've lost your whole draw for the turn. That's really bad. We've talked about cards that do nothing except for their icons, and we give them auto fails. So if your dilemma misfires, it's a trash card because they don't replace themselves and they take up your draw for the turn. It's like drawing a weakness at that point. If you're going to run dilemmas, you're probably going to want a way to control when you get them. Man, I feel like after last video, right? And the weeks, I've spent since the last video, considering all these all the options and all the combinations. Yeah. And I'm sitting here with my coffee today, going over the dilemma cards, and I'm starting to think that I really, really wish that Survivor had a way to draw 2, discard 1, or do a filtered draw. Basically seeker stuff. Eureka and dilemmas feel perfect, but they don't. Except they do because they're made for Daryl, and Daryl is a seeker. So I just managed to solve my own riddle. So what am I getting at here? Yeah, so you're probably going to want a way to control when you draw Making Preparations, because if you manage to draw this at the beginning, near the beginning of the investigation phase, it's kind of incredible, because then then the whole team, with the full knowledge of the board state, is able to decide the ideal skills that they need for the turn without having to worry about the downsides, such as needing to make willpower checks in the Mythos phase, then it's great. But if you just randomly draw this in upkeep, it's kind of awful because then you have to worry about Mythos and you have to worry about the next investigation phase. You could have like a team of decks that don't use like agility at all, and then it's not that bad. But for the most part, it gets really bad because then you're probably gonna have to like decide between offense and defense. Yeah, and then it's kind of awful. I think this could be really incredible and really, really good, especially in a team build where you could hilariously have 8 copies of making preparations amongst your team. And if you've got a way to control when you draw it. If you don't have a way to control when you draw it, then this can really bite. Yeah, like almost as much. This is gonna feel like a treachery, if you can't control when you draw it.
Of the dilemmas, this is the one I like probably the most in solo because
Oh, it's cool. Yeah.
It seems like the timing issue is a little bit mitigated here because usually in solo you know exactly what you're going to do the next turn. You're either going to investigate, fight, or move or stuff like that. And so generally I'd pick, say, willpower and investigate and just go from there. And hey, I'm getting, even if I don't use the willpower, I'm still getting the investigate, which I'm probably going to do 3 times next turn if necessary, and this will be good. I do agree though, in multiplayer, man, oh man, the timing on this.
Yeah.
Like I've written on each of the dilemmas, I've written synergizes with Katya on it, and I feel like you really need a way to control when these things are going off, because if it's just random, that's not good.
You hit on an important note with this card. In solo, the board state only changes by 1 card a turn, by 1 encounter card. In 4-player, the board state can change by 4 encounter cards, which is 4 times as many. So the board state's a bit more like chaotic. But I do see what you mean. Like if you already have it predicted that next turn I'm going to investigate 3 times, this is pretty good because then you could take a defensive stat and an offensive stat, and then you're probably fine. But then again, like consider this: you're still need to weigh the benefit of making preparations, adding 1 to your intellect for a turn versus a deduction. You could have drawn a deduction instead, or an unexpected courage or a daring if you're fighting.
I feel like they really missed an opportunity to put the peril keyword on all of these dilemmas. So then,
oh hell yeah,
it's just whoever draws it gets to make all the decisions, and everybody else just has to sit there and just take whatever they get. But alas, that was not included on the card, and it's not part of the dilemma keyword either. So you do get to discuss this with the group when you draw it, so you can lobby for whatever skill you happen to need, and see if whoever draws this will be kind to you. How would you rate this one?
So I'm thinking fully of the 3-4 player angle. All right, what can you do with this? All right, if it's giving +1 to like 3 or 4 tests. Yeah, and then I'm worried about the -1s. Oh, this one's so hard. Cameron, why do the Scarlet Keys cards have to be like so comborific and like specific? Why are they so hard to rate in isolation? Just tell me why. Why are they so hard?
I don't know. I think it's just because they're all constructed with decks in mind.
Yeah.
They're not general use. Like we've gone well beyond the point where they can make a card that's generally useful in a bunch of different decks without breaking something. So the cards we get are becoming increasingly narrow and focused on one, like you're going to play this card in Daryl, or you are going to play making preparations, and all the dilemmas with Katya, so you have some control over them. You're not just going to play it just because.
Yeah, but all the control draw in this game is in Seeker.
Yeah, well,
where the dilemmas would fit.
Daryl's a Seeker.
But I guess that's where they're going with this. Is Daryl's a Seeker, and he gets all the Seeker stuff like Eureka.
I mean, there's Min as well. Min's Survivor, Seeker. Who else can take it? Is there anybody else I'm missing? I guess you could play like Rex. Rex could grab these. I guess any of the Dunwich. You could make some sort of stew out of Dunwich investigators with pretty much anything.
So what you're saying is we've got a red Seeker card here?
Oh, maybe the survivors are eating the Seeker's lunch for once. That would be unusual.
Reverse lunch.
It's like, well, the Seekers have been eating everybody's lunches for so long. It's about time. Like one of the other classes is like, oh, we got one of the Seeker abilities. Awesome.
Bam! Well, there's one coming up that sure feels like that. All right, let's see. Oh, how to rate this thing. Oh my gosh. All right. Here's where I'm gonna go with this one. Here's where I'm gonna go. All right. Given that you have some way to control when you draw this, like whether it's Eureka or Katya or Scroll of Secrets, man, Seeker cards. Like, given that you have some way to control when you draw this, I'm gonna give this a 0. If you are relying on your upkeep phase to draw into this, it's garbage. Don't play it.
Yeah, I do like this one for solo. Would I mean, I think I could just put this in a solo deck and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna get I'm gonna be fine. Yeah. In multiplayer, I think it's just way too timing specific, especially like because then you've got to start thinking about your turn, because it's like, okay, I'm the survivor player who's playing the dilemma deck at the table, so I need to go first. So we see the dilemmas first, so we can actually make decisions that matter rather than me going second, third, fourth, and then me drawing a dilemma by accident. And then, okay, so the investigation phase is going to end and we're going to get virtually nothing for this because I'm the last player, or there's only one other person who can, like, it's still useful, but you're not getting the full bang for your buck for it. The other thing I don't like about this, some of the dilemma cards, not all of them, is that you have to track effects over turns.
Oh, that's right. You got to remember.
Which is something we haven't really had in the game.
Oh, that's true.
Most cards are like, they fire on your turn and you don't have to track to the next turn. But this is one of those cards where it's just like, okay, especially in multiplayer, like solo, I have a really bad memory for things, but I'm sure I could remember that I've got a making preparations on the table. But if you say draw this during your upkeep phase in 4-player, you've got an entire mythos phase to go through.
Gotta remember this.
And there's a whole raft of stuff that could happen in that mythos phase before you get to the investigation phase. And then everybody because the board state has suddenly changed, then you have the inevitable discussion about, okay, well, how do we handle whatever just happened to us?
Oh, that's right. The classic. It's like when playing D&D, right? And this always happens. Someone misses an attack and then remembers their modifier, after they miss, and then you have to roll it back.
And then it's going to be like, okay,
and
so
then you're never going to roll back the failures. You're only going to roll back the successes.
Yeah. So after you have the long discussion with the other 3 players about how the board state's changed, and then somebody's going to start taking their turn, and then you're going to be like, oh, remember, we have making preparations in play still from last turn.
But it's not in play because you discard it immediately. It doesn't like attach itself to the act or anything. Like, it doesn't stay in play to even help you remember.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking back to, remember that treachery in the Dream Eaters? The Whispers of Hypnos, I think it is. The one where somebody picks 2 stats and you have to lower them by 1 for the whole round. That's just for the round off of a treachery card, and I've seen that get forgotten so many times. Then you got this thing where you gotta remember it for like a whole round. Oh my god, this is going to be pretty brain taxing.
Yeah, so it's not a huge issue, but it is something I think that we haven't seen before with cards having to track effects over various rounds of the game, which is especially like, I wish this was like play it in your threat area or something.
Yeah, like put it in on the board somewhere. However, there is a solution to this because I've played a lot of D&D. And, when you play D&D, you find tricks to remember things. All right, whoever you are who runs by the same token, turn this into an accessory.
So what do I rate this thing? You gave it a 0. Is it a +1 in solo? Probably not. The other thing I kind of wish about this is that your main way of controlling the dilemmas, at least in this box, is Katya, and she is a 2 XP card.
And she's not a permanent. I wish Katya was a permanent.
And
if
she's
Katya
not
was
a
a permanent,
permanent,
I'd feel way better about these cards. Yeah.
So you've got to
Yeah.
put these cards in your deck and have them playing with them until you can get Katya, and even then there's no guarantee you're going to get her before these start firing off. So
Also keep in mind, Katya, you could be playing Peter Sylvester level 2 instead.
oh, do I give it an Elder thing? No.
For solo? I thought this was better than multiplayer.
Yeah, it's 0. I'll give it a 0. My long-winded way of getting around to a 0. Yeah, I mean, I could see myself playing this and, being satisfied with it. There are some of the other dilemmas that I'm not crazy about in solo. I think they work better in multiplayer, but this one feels like it's a little bit more chaotic in multiplayer and easier to control in solo. So, but we will have plenty of dilemmas to talk about here in this batch of reviews.
Oh, are we going straight to another one?
We are going straight to another one. This is Predator or Prey. Event, no cost, dilemma, tactic, max 2 dilemmas per round. Revelation: if there are no enemies in play, draw 1 card. Otherwise, you must decide. Choose 1. Each unengaged enemy moves once toward the nearest investigator. Each investigator disengages from each enemy engaged with them and moves once away from the nearest enemy. Now, as much as I liked making preparations in solo, this one I do not like in solo, simply because I feel like you're going to end up triggering option 1 far too often. And I don't want enemies that I'm not expecting to be moving on top of me. Option 2 is really nice if it happens, but I find that I'm very rarely engaged with stuff at the end of my turn, because then something bad has happened.
Here's a thought. I just reread this thing and a light clicked on. You could still hit option 2 if you're not engaged with something. You would move away, like farther away from the nearest enemy.
Yeah, is that how it works?
Yeah, because like the and, at least in this game, you don't have to be engaged with an enemy in order to trigger the second half of the and.
Okay, in that case, better.
Yeah.
I was sort of reading like if you're not engaged with anything,
you'd have to be engaged.
You'd have to pick 1, but if you don't have to, then. But I don't think I would play that just for like a free move randomly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, random free move. I mean, you've got like shortcut. If you really want to take a move.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So how does this work in multiplayer?
Oh good lord. Oh god. Oh my god. Oh my god, because you have to make one decision for the whole team. It's like, good god. That sounds like terrible, because you're going to end up doing something where, let's say you rescue one character by letting them disengage and move away. You're going to also have to tell the Seeker to like shove off their, you're going to shove the Seeker off their location that has like 17 clues on it. And then they're going to have to like go back. Like, oh my god, this seems so chaotic in multiplayer. And then of course, like this is taking up your draw. So like, in order for this to be even worth playing, like it has to be like worth more than like an unexpected courage, and I just don't see how it is. This seems like absolute chaos in multiplayer, because like you can often harm somebody by helping someone.
I mean, I can see various advantages to it. I mean, moving enemies around, moving characters into positions where they need to be, but by the same token, if you're forcing people to, like, forced movement is generally not ideal a lot of the time, because people they're there for a reason, especially if they're the Seeker and they have clues to pick up, and you're suddenly like, oh, by the way, can you go over there for a few minutes and then make your way back for really no, like, unless I don't see what benefit that would be. Like,
I don't know if it's a strike against this card, but they forgot to add non-elite to the top option. So
how would you rate this one?
Honestly, I'd never play this in multiplayer or in solo or in any on Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday, or Saturday. I'm gonna give this an auto fail. This is just bad. Like, it's too random. It takes up a draw, and like you're gonna it's gonna feel like a treachery sometimes. So like, just don't play this.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to go down to auto fail on this one. don't think I'd play it in solo though, which means it's pretty much in autofill territory for me, especially if you're drawing this during the upkeep phase.
Oh yeah, because then
Like the board state is set, everybody sort of has an idea, and then you throw a wrench into it by moving everything around. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to give this one an autofill as well. I will not play this in solo, and probably wouldn't put this in my deck in multiplayer either, just for fear of what I would end up doing with it by accident.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe if you have a way of controlling it with Katya or some other effect where you can pick when this happens, then I could see, you would be able to get the upside out of it. But
then it's not a 0 XP card anymore at that point.
no, that's true. You're
Yeah.
paying a 2 XP tax on
hmm
most of these dilemmas, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a card that I am going to be playing around with.
Just play Unexpected Courage instead. Just play something that always works. Instead of like having to imagine board situations where it can work and you have to like ignore all the board situations where this is a treachery.
The next card we're going to look at is Shed a Light. It is a 2-cost event that has an intellect and agility skill icon, insight and trick trait fast. Play before revealing a chaos token during an investigation you are performing, and only if the difficulty of this test is currently 0. This test automatically succeeds. You discover 1 additional clue at this location and 1 additional clue at any location. So this is the investigation counterpart of exploit weakness. I can't think of many other level 0 cards that discover 3 clues.
Ooh, that discover 3? Oh wow, yeah, you're right. Oh, I know one. It's a secret card. It's level 0. Can you name it?
No.
I can't either because I've forgotten the name, but it's the one that defeats you.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah, that discovers 3 clues.
Yeah, this seems very, very strong.
And I've seen it happen. Like, this is very good.
Especially since, like, Exploit Weakness has cards that work with it, but they're all kind of marginal, like Expose Weakness and Anatomical Diagrams and cards I wasn't playing anyway. But, I mean, Flashlight is a card that I play a lot of. Old Keyring is a card that I play a lot of. So there are cards that work better with this one, I think, but automatically succeeding for 3 clues that's crazy.
There's more support for Shroud Reduction than there is for like Evasion Reduction. Case in point, Flashlight level 3, it has to be level 3 to lower Evasion by 2. It has to be level 0 to lower Shroud by 2. So yeah, there's been support for this sort of thing since the core set. And the fact that it discovers 3 clues, and the fact that that 3rd clue can be on your own location, as opposed to, like, it doesn't have to be on a different location, so it can be just 3 clues on my location. Like, that's very good. Like when I said earlier that it felt like Survivor was stealing some of Seeker's lunch, this is it. Man,
right.
Min is so strong. Min and Daryl are just so good.
Yeah, again, I guess the only knock against this card is it's probably a little too good for solo, simply because
how often do you have 3 clues on a location?
Yeah, solo? Like, you're not going to have 3 clues, and you're probably not going to have an additional clue at any location unless something has gone horribly wrong and you've had to move more quickly than you anticipated. I mean, this is great for those situations when you have to do that, but I don't necessarily know if I would pack a card specifically for that situation.
Although I have in the past, they've been kind of janky decks, but I have toyed around with specifically it was Rex, where like you use discover clues at any location effects, in order to like trick his ability. And the idea is that you cheat high shrouds, in solo, in order, with like discover clues at any locations or discover clues at a nearby location. I'm talking seeking answers,
right?
And then you got like, so this kind of goes along with like that idea of like you have in the know and pocket telescope and things like that, so you can use to like cheat high shrouds, Yeah, and that's kind of fun. I've done that before. Although you're right, for 2 costs, like you don't in solo, you don't necessarily ever have to discover 3 clues at once in solo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
but
something
I
that you're
I,
asked to
I think
do.
you could engineer it, and it could be kind of fun to try to pull off.
How would you rate it?
Elder Sign. I don't think it's quite curse worthy unless you're recurring it over and over, and it does cost 2, which kind of brings it in line. So, but this thing is very good. This is like actually worth, you know, this is like the spark that can light the flame of a whole deck type. Because it's such big payoff. So I'm gonna give this an Elder Sign.
Yeah, it's 3 clues is in multiplayer is huge. So
Oh.
I think it deserves an Elder Sign for that. It's not quite as good in solo, but I'm not going to knock it down to a +1 for that. It's
Yeah.
not many cards discover. I mean, the only if what you say is true, and the only other card that gets you 3 clues defeats you, just goes to show how good this one is. It's like you lose the game if you discover 3 clues with the other card. This one, not so much. So the next card is another dilemma. This is at a Crossroads event. This one costs 1 XP, so we're into our XP cards now. Dilemma and insight trait, max 2 dilemmas per round. Revelation, choose an investigator and decide. Choose one. The chosen investigator must immediately take an action as if it were their turn, then discards 1 card at random, or the chosen investigator loses 1 action during their next turn, then draws 3 cards. What do you think about At a Crossroads?
So the interesting thing about At a Crossroads is its currency is cards in hand. So one thing that's worth noting, like when we're talking about this, is that you have to lose the dilemma already. So let's say you're playing solo. I'm just gonna for simplicity. So if you're playing At a Crossroads, option 1 actually says chosen investigator immediately takes an action and virtually is discarding 2 cards because you have to discard a card at random and you're losing At a Crossroads. So it's like you're losing 2 cards to take 1 action. And then the second one, it's kind of like saying lose an action, draw 2, because you have to dump At a Crossroads and lose that draw. If it like replaced itself, then I think it would be it would feel about right. Yeah, because like it's dealing in actions and cards, and I think the fact that the dilemma itself discards itself like kind of weighs down the benefits.
Yeah, the more we talk about these dilemma cards, the less certain I am about them. The idea of sacrificing an action to get 3 cards seems pretty good to me, but then you are already losing the draw, and
yeah, because you're losing the dilemma.
And in solo, losing an action is a pretty big deal. So I don't know if I would be necessarily eager to play this card for that reason. Mm-hmm. And I often wonder about, I mean, we've seen a bunch of these cards that allow you to immediately take an action. I don't know how impactful those actions are. So say I draw this during the investigation phase, somebody takes an action. Okay, if I draw this during the upkeep phase, I guess because you get to pick somebody, but then they may not want you to pick them because they have 1 card in their hand, which is the card they were planning on playing next turn. So
okay, so immediately taking actions, like we've seen quick thinking and we've seen swift reflexes, and those are both very good. But I think largely because you can like choose the perfect time when you want the extra action. Like this one, unless you're figuring out a way to like choose when you draw this, which costs more XP and more resources, then I don't know about this one. Because you have to like put a lot of effort into like deciding when you draw this. It doesn't get itself up to the level of like quick thinking.
Yeah, it doesn't seem cut and dry with these these dilemmas. The timing is a pretty big issue, and then in order to fix the timing, you have to spend XP.
Yeah, and
primarily
effort
to do it. So, how would you rate this one?
I'm starting to realize that I feel like all these dilemmas, their effects seem their effects seem to be balanced if you ignore the fact that you lose the dilemma itself. I'm just noticing that with all of them. If they all said draw a card to replace them, I'd feel a lot better about all of these because the effects themselves they seem so like neutral. Making preparations, it gives +2 to 2 skills and -2 to other skills. All right, Predator or Prey, I don't know what's going on with that one. That one's just whatever. And then you got this one where it's like it feels very much like a lose one action, draw three, okay, or take an action, discard one. They feel very their effect is kind of neutral, but it ignores the fact that you spent the dilemma. Gosh. So like if I were playing a deck where I'm already drawing like 2 or 3 cards a turn already, then I guess this gets better because then I don't care so much. Then I would take option one and I wouldn't care so much about discarding a card. But then a deck like that, you're starting to get to like broken seeker shit anyway. Like you're starting to get into stuff like, you're God, and it's a deck I would never play because it gets like because you're just breaking the game by constantly cycling your deck and drawing tons of cards. So like I would never play this even in like a deck where it would work. Is what I'm getting at because you're pushing the game too far. God, how would I rate this?
You know, the more we talk about these dilemma cards, I just feel like we're entering blessed territory
No, we're not entering Blast
with
because
each
Katya
one.
is not a good payoff. Like because you have to spend an action to trigger Katya. It's like if Katya wasn't an action, I'd agree with you, but she's an action.
No, but the reason I say bless is
Ugh.
simply because I feel like I'm trying to rate them as though okay, I'm just going to play this card regardless of other cards.
Yeah.
I'm just going to build my solo deck. I'm going to put At the Crossroads in it and that's the extent of it. But the more we talk about them, the less I feel compelled to do that. And the only reason I would play this is if I have a plan to play a dilemma deck down the road. Like
Yeah,
I'm
but
not just going to put
what do
this
you
card in my
get
deck.
if you play a dilemma deck? What are you getting? You're like what's the payoff for a dilemma deck? Like the effects themselves are so neutral. Elder thing. I'm gonna do an elder thing. All right. Because there is some value if you're playing a deck that like is already drawing heavily. You lose the dilemma to give a friend an action in a time of need. Okay, I'm giving it another thing because at least it does that. And then you know what? Some people might want to lose an action because they want to refill their hand. They were planning to spend their actions drawing anyway, so go for it. All right, I'm giving it another thing.
All right. Well, I am going to go. I'll go 0 because you're getting an action, and we have seen that getting an action from things like quick thinking can be useful.
Mm-hmm.
You do get to pick if you're in multiplayer, you do get to choose anybody to get that action.
Yeah.
They have to sacrifice a card for it, but that's their problem, not mine. So really, you can build a nice grief deck out of all these. It's a good thing Safina is a rogue and not a survivor. Although she can what's the card she can get to get all these cards into her deck? Actually, not this one.
No, not this one.
Not this
But
one. So
versatile. She can versatile in making preparations,
that's
and
right.
then.
The enemies run everywhere. Have fun.
Oh yeah, or predator or prey. That's the most griefy thing you can do. That'd be hilarious.
So yeah, if you're gonna play the dilemmas, I don't think this one's bad. I might even consider playing it in solo, although especially if I do take draw actions, so losing an action for 3 cards. You're not really getting three cards because you're losing this one.
Yeah, because you lose the dilemma. Yeah.
But it's not bad. So I'll go with 0 on this one. That's going to do it for part 2 of our look at the Survivor cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Man, these dilemmas are going to kill us. We're just going to be a mess by the end of this.
I am losing my sanity, like, as we speak. You know why? Because these dilemmas require me all to have Katya in play. But the problem is, Katya is not Peter Sylvester. And if I had Peter Sylvester in play, I'd be healing all this sanity loss that I'm suffering from thinking about dilemmas. But that's not the case. That being said, Shed of Light is so far is kind of in contention for like the strongest card in the set.
I
It
would
kind of is.
definitely agree
Yeah.
with you on that one. It's
Uh-huh.
head and shoulders above some of the things. And I mean,
Yeah.
it does the simple thing, right? It's like, here are 3 clues. As long as you can,
Discover more clues.
as long as you can get the test down to 0, here are 3 clues. And Daryl does that with an evidence, and then, he's got a flashlight or a gumption, and suddenly 4 shroud locations are targets too. So.
But I mean, that being said, Daryl, I mean, he's got 5 intellect. He doesn't need to reduce every location shroud to 0.
No. So Shed of Light. Shed of Light is very good. The dilemmas, man, I don't know what to think.
They are draining my sanity. These dilemmas, they are draining my sanity.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.